LeBron James is doing the impossible, again. In year 23, he led LA's offense to a scorching hot playoff start against one of the NBA's best defenses. It wasn't just LeBron though. Luke Kennard, Marcus Smart, Rui Hachimura, and DeAndre Ayton all came to play. But that's not a random occurrence. It's the result of a major shift in how LeBron and JJ Redick's coaching staff are approaching the game. In today's video brought to you by PrizePicks, we're going to figure out exactly why the LeBron-led offense works so well. But before we do that, we first have to understand why it's different from how the Lakers typically play. Throughout the season, Bron was arguably the team's third most involved offensive player. If things weren't running through Luka, Reeves was probably the one initiating, and both of those guys are pick and roll dominant, meaning space the floor, get them coming off a high ball screen, and they'll find ways to pick apart just about any coverage. Show them too deep of a drop, and they're either hunting for the pull-up three or looking to turn the corner and go right at a backpedaling big. Send help from the perimeter, and they're spraying it out to a shooter, forcing defenses to adjust. Instead of a drop, they might bring a big to the level of the screen, and now those guys are hunting for 4-on-3 advantages, getting the rest of the defense in rotation. If you want to avoid the risk of giving them numbers altogether, you could always switch. But now the game just turns into a constant hunt for mismatches, both on the perimeter and in the post. With that said though, this style of play isn't perfect. When the point of attack of your offense never really changes, and the reads are determined by how the rest of the defense reacts to the initial action, it becomes a lot easier for playoff defenses to hone in on certain tendencies and funnel the ball where they want it to go, which is something Kobe Bryant talked about in 2019.
If you take one player, you put him at the top of the key, or you put him on the wing, and you're running screen rolls, you're always in front of the defense. The defense can key on that, particularly in the playoffs. And that's easy to defend.
Easy to guard might be a bit harsh, but there's definitely some merit to the idea that defenses can key in on it. For example, if there's a certain shooter on the court who the defense is comfortable leaving open, they can cheat way off of that player to take away the roll man, have the big prioritize the ball, and funnel passes to that corner pretty much every time. That's exactly what the Warriors did in the 2018 Western Conference Finals. They made it a priority to take the paint away from Harden. And without the downhill pressure, not only did he struggle to generate quality shots for himself, he didn't get to the line as much and couldn't access those lobs to Capella. He could either look for tough jumpers over the top of everyone, or he could succumb to Golden State's strategy, find the open corner shooter, and trust them to hit shots. Well, in Game 7, the trio of PJ Tucker, Trevor Ariza, and Gerald Green shot a combined 3 of 18 from 3. You could certainly argue that the bigger problem here is one-dimensional role players. If these guys were more of a threat to attack off the catch, you can't let them get the ball in space or against closeouts because they'll extend advantages. But then these elite playoff defenses will just find something else to key in on. Because as easy as it was to funnel passes where they wanted them to go, they could just as easily make a deliberate effort to keep the ball away from certain spots. Like in the 2024 finals when the Celtics wouldn't let Kyrie Irving catch with an advantage to attack, instead leaving PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. by themselves above the break and daring them to either hit shots or make decisions on the fly. This right here is where the Lakers sort of broke off of that lineage. Instead of those kickouts finding stationary shooters, you've either got dynamic decision makers or multi-level scorers. For example, Rui's a knockdown corner three-point shooter. Run him off the line though, and he can get to a mid-range pull-up. Similarly, you can't leave Reeves or Luka open, but close out too hard and they'll find the right pressure points or make the right extra passes. This is where LeBron made a huge difference over the past few months. Anytime a defense left him with even a sliver of room to attack off the catch, he'd explode downhill and do what he does best. So all of these things start to open up the floor and make matchup or schematic decisions a lot more difficult. Do you really want to be scrambling against a LeBron drive? Do you really want to be trying to close on a Luke Kennard corner three? Another way LA differentiated themselves from a standard spread pick and roll attack was by diversifying the way they got into these plays. Instead of starting from up top and letting the defense predetermine a coverage, they often started their ball handler off the ball, ran him off a series of screens to get the defense moving, then turned that into a pick and roll. Simultaneously, they're often setting up weak side or decoy action to engage help and force them into making split-second decisions. It's usually not as simple as standing around and watching Luka or Reeves come off a screen. Even when it turns into that though, Luka is the ultimate example of a player in today's game who mastered all of the reads. Between his size, handle, and use of pace, he can turn the corner and get wherever he wants on the floor with a live dribble. Then he's not only a threat to score in seemingly every way imaginable, but has the vision and creativity as a passer to get the ball to all of the right spots. For these reasons, when he's out there, the Lakers don't mind running almost everything through his pick and roll attack. This season, he had the ball in his hands for about 7.5 minutes a game, the second most of any player in the league. That's been a consistent theme throughout his career. If you have Luka Doncic on your team, he's gonna dominate the ball. and the results speak for themselves. Since his sophomore season, the league average half-court offense has hovered a few percentage points below 1 point per possession. With Luka on the court, his teams have always cleared that mark by a considerable margin, just churning out top 3 half-court offenses like it's as easy as drinking water. Like I said, he's pretty much mastered this style of play. So heading into the playoffs, there really wasn't a question of whether or not LA's offense would translate, up until both Luka and Reeves got hurt. Now, 41-year-old LeBron had to run the show. And who better to carry this mantle than the guy who at one point mastered this style of play himself? LeBron, as a ball-dominant spread pick-and-roll operator, won 4 championships. So one could automatically assume that the Lakers would stick to their usual offense. That couldn't be further from reality, though. They've completely revamped this offense into something different. Something that has a proven track record of working deep in the playoffs and worked for them to open up round 1 against the Rockets. Before we get into that though, I want to take a second to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. If you know you can play responsibly and you have the means to do so, PrizePicks is America's #1 app for sports picks. So if you're looking for a place to get in on the NBA playoffs, use code HMA and get started. Heading into Game 2, I'm expecting the Lakers to stick with their diverse offensive approach, an approach that helped Marcus Smart get to 8 dimes. So we're taking him for more than 3.5 assists. I have no idea what to expect from Houston's offense, with the potential of KD returning, but what I do know is that Reed Shepherd's going to get his shots up. He attempted 20 field goals in Game 1. I'd be surprised if he doesn't score more than 12 in Game 2. It's that simple. Find the stat you want, pick more or less, and you've got your lineup. If you sign up for PrizePicks with code HMA and play $5, you get $50 in lineups instantly. So download the app or click the link in the description to get started, and let me hear your picks down in the comments. One of the most important attributes an offensive engine can have is an understanding of how to get role players consistently involved. I don't mean by finding them on stationary kickout passes. I mean by getting them the ball early, within the flow, injecting them with confidence, and empowering them to make decisions. Think about last year's run from the Pacers. You don't get those performances from guys like Aaron Nesmith, Benedict Mathurin, or Andrew Nembhard without a superstar like Tyrese Halliburton at the helm. Between his ability to push pace in transition, access the pull-up 3 at volume, and pose a legitimate blow-by threat in the half court, he applied just enough scoring pressure to make playoff defenses react. And then the ball just never stuck with him. As soon as there was an available skip pass, a mismatch, or it looked like the defense was even slightly out of position, he'd get rid of it so that his teammates could attack a rotating defense. Of course, this style of offense requires having talented enough players to actually pose their own scoring threat and make good decisions, but it's important to keep in mind that even the NBA players at the end of benches are unbelievably talented. If you let them settle into each game and get into a rhythm early, it's a lot easier to enable them to play above what you might think of their skill set. And that's a theme that's consistent in pretty much every overperforming team that makes a deep playoff run. Think about the Miami Heat at the beginning of the 2020s. Jimmy Butler was a great isolationist who had the ability to take over games when needed. Throughout the course of games though, he did all of these subtle things to improve possessions, moving without the ball and getting to the right spots at the right time, punishing certain coverages as either a cutter or a screener, which often led to mismatches. More importantly though, he never took touches away from his teammates, unless it was absolutely necessary. Everyone on the team was enabled to run the offense in spurts, while he actively made their lives easier with his dynamic off-ball play. We all remember those standout performances from Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and Duncan Robinson, or the 2020 Eastern Conference Finals, in the bubble, when Jimmy was the 4th leading scorer on his own team, while he and 3 other guys all averaged over 4 assists a game. This is what many people refer to as an egalitarian offense. Instead of running everything through one guy, opportunities to handle the ball, create, and make decisions are distributed across the board. And you can run this style even if you have one of those one-man offenses. Just look at Denver. Jokic has the ability to dominate the ball as a post-up scoring weapon who can pick apart any defense as a playmaker. But they understand that it's harder to defend an offense that's structured around movement, cutting, screening, and creating multiple different points of attack that the opposing defense has to think about. The 4 players next to Jokic are put in a position to handle the ball, control pace, or operate in the 2-man game. Him being such an offensive juggernaut takes some of the more difficult cognitive load away from his teammates and simplifies their games, while still empowering them to make decisions, stay in rhythm, and legitimately play a possession-by-possession role in the offense. The reason I bring all of this up is that it's exactly what we've been seeing from LeBron and the Lakers, and it was on full display against the Rockets. The first thing you might have noticed is that he wasn't the point guard. Marcus Smart initiated most of the offense. Luke Kennard also handled the rock a ton in the backcourt, and there was a short stint where Bronny ran the one. Instead, a lot of LeBron's touches were very Jokic-esque. He'd set up near the elbow, then they'd get into some action. This time it's a quick flare screen for Smart, who's left with a great look from 3. They ran it again in the second quarter. Smart comes off a flare and his defender ducks under, only instead of catching and shooting, he attacks that space, draws help, and drops a dime to Ayton. This was their go-to action throughout the night. Once Bron catches the ball in that pinch post position, he's able to survey the entire floor. So when Kennard comes off a flare screen from Ayton, he's reading multiple defenders at once. The first read would be Kennard freeing up on the perimeter, but Amen Thompson stays attached. Then he's gonna wait to see if either Reed or Capella cheat into the paint as Kennard runs through. If not, that's his cue, although Amen makes a superhuman recovery. It isn't just in the middle of the floor where he'll set up though. They also like to start him deep on one of the wings, often with an empty corner. From these spots, he poses a driving threat, so Şengün cheats over from the weak side, which is all it takes for Bron to throw a laser to Ayton in the paint. When he gets the ball deep on the wing, what they're typically looking to do is bring one of their best shooters towards the ball. In most cases, that's going to be Kennard, starting on the opposite side of the court and curling off a down screen near the top of the key. But I want you to focus on the pass. When Bron releases the ball, Kennard hasn't even started to curl yet. The timing and placement are so perfect though that he catches it in stride, and that precision plays a big role in creating the advantage. Here's another example of that exact same action. Kennard isn't able to get free on the initial screen, but that's only the first option. Bron immediately moves the ball to Ayton, cuts around Kennard to get a switch, then seals off position in the post, while Kennard and Ayton set up a two-man game. They don't end up scoring, but the key is that they have multiple layers to their attack. That really stood out on this play from the beginning of the fourth. Another spot you'll see him initiate these actions from is at the top of the key. The Lakers go to some split action, with Rui setting a flare screen for Kennard before slipping. The Rockets do a great job of switching without giving up an advantage, only for Bron to immediately set up another action. Now Rui's gonna curl off a down screen from Ayton to come get the ball, which gives him the entire middle of the floor to work with in isolation as he gets to a tough mid-range jumper. The way they'll string one action right into another is reminiscent of how the Nuggets play. He starts this one near the block and curls off a down screen to get the ball near the free throw line. As soon as he sees this defender drop, he immediately whips a pass to the corner, but they recover, so he flashes to the ball for a quick repost. Without a lot of time to work with, he's forced to call his own number one-on-one and drills a face-up jumper. Speaking of which, a big part of the reason why this style of offense works so well is because in addition to LeBron's vision and passing ability, he's still a big-time threat to score with his back to the basket. His combination of strength and balance is just so much to deal with if you're guarding him one-on-one. Even a strong defender like Josh Okogie can't keep him away from the basket, not to mention the craft. It's one thing to be able to work your way deep into the paint at will, but what about when you're dealing with added length or extra help? That's when he'll use all sorts of fakes, pivots, and pirouettes to create an opening. He really has a counter he can fall back on against any coverage, especially when he's on the left side of the court. Send help from the middle, and he's turning over his right shoulder for that patented turnaround jumper. Although, I will say, he should probably leave the skyhooking to the league's number 2 all-time leading scorer. All jokes aside though, he's still somebody who the defense has to commit extra help to when he gets the ball in the post. The Lakers leverage that scoring threat in a number of ways, primarily by starting him on an empty side of the court inside the arc. Send help from up top, and he'll kick it to the closest shooter for a great look from 3. Send help from the baseline, or commit to a flat-out double team off the catch, and he'll do things like this. There's no shortage of ways he can get the ball to the open man. So, just like when he's in the pinch post or deep on the wing, they'll set up action. Notice how both Capella and Smith are focused on the ball, and not Ayton setting a flare screen for Rui up top. Capella attempts to clog the passing lane with his length, but remember what I said about precision and timing. He perfectly threads the needle while leading Rui in stride to the corner where he's left with an easy jumper. Between LeBron's passing and scoring threat, he can really pick apart any defense from the post. It sorta goes without saying, but it's probably in Houston's best interest to keep him from getting the ball in these spots. It's never that simple though. He's especially unique because of his size, athleticism, and instincts as a cutter. Okogie tries to deny him the touch here, so he just darts backdoor, then throws a wraparound bullet to Rui in the corner, and he's able to knock this one down. His slashing threat is especially dangerous curling around screens, so they'll use that to their advantage by starting him near the wing and bringing him to the nail, knowing that the defense is going to be forced to collapse and probably concede an open 3. This is also a great way for him to establish post position. Capella's way back, so the cut isn't an issue, but that leaves him with space to get the ball in the middle of the paint. Now the rest of the defense has to react, and he makes the right read, although Vando isn't ready to shoot this one. The biggest pressure point with these screens though is the vulnerability of mismatches. The Lakers want to get Reed Shepherd switched onto LeBron. The Rockets want to do everything in their power to not let that happen. He'll just counter a top block with a backdoor cut though. Kennard misses him, but he never stops moving. He curls around Ayton, gets a switch, then establishes position, and now it's on. Do you leave him one-on-one, bring some help, come with a double? This time Marcus Smart ends up drawing a foul. That entire sequence started with the hunt for Shepherd. Here's one that starts in the paint. LaRavia is going to set a cross screen for Bron to go get the ball in the post, and they refuse to switch, so Tari Eason tries blasting through the screen and picks up a foul. Another interesting wrinkle to consider is that he's not the only one who can attack smalls. This time Rui's the one screening, and Reed shows to prevent Bron from catching the ball on the move. All that does is empty a side of the court for Rui to post up Reed though, so the Rockets are still forced to bring help. Rui's not as quick with the decision, but he eventually makes the right read, and the ball finds Kennard in the corner, who shot a perfect 5 of 5 from 3. In general, he's just not the only guy who can do things with the ball, which means that while the offense is built around his post-ups, they're never force-feeding him or over-relying on him to create everything for them. Other guys can make plays and score. Take this play for example. They're looking to get the ball to him on that empty side. That's only one of many options. They can also set up the two-man game with Kennard up top, who finds some breathing room for a big-time triple. Something else you'll notice is that his post-up presence creates space. By pinning Okogie towards the middle of the floor, the only way he can help on a right-hand drive is by ducking under, and he's not able to get there in time. Regardless of what the Lakers are looking to get to, Bron starts most possessions near the nail. And to put even more stress on defenses, he can easily turn this post position into a ball screen. Remember, they're not going to switch with Reed. He ducks under, while Okogie stays glued to Bron, leaving Smart with his easiest look of the night. This time Reed's matched up with LaRavia, and LeBron immediately finds him so that he can set a ball screen. Same thing, no help, leaving LaRavia with a ton of room to attack. It's more than just the matchup issues this creates though. Bron's actually an extremely good screen setter. When they're too high up, Reed can duck under. But by lowering his position and making real contact, now Okogie has to help, and even that isn't always enough. Just the threat of him catching the ball or setting a screen creates so much space. With Okogie stuck to his body and their two best shooters on the weak side, there's no way for them to bring help to the middle of the floor without picking a poison, like a Luke Kennard 3. Which brings me back to what I said about empowering the rest of the guys to make decisions and trusting them to create. It just brings so much flow to LA's offense. First, they try to run Bron off a down screen, but Reed does a good job of showing and recovering, so there's no advantage. Only for Smart to come right back and set a ball screen, which Reed once again does a good job of showing and recovering against. The ball gets back to Smart, who immediately sets up spread pick and roll with Ayton, which is when they finally get the advantage they've been looking for. Everybody's involved. Everybody's in rhythm. Everybody's playing confident. Just ask Luke Kennard.
Yeah, I mean, he trusts everybody on the floor with him, and he continues to tell us to be aggressive and look for our shots. Obviously, he's going to do his thing, and we need him to be aggressive and do what he does, but he's really encouraging. He gives confidence to everybody, and he just elevates everybody on the floor.
The biggest reason why LA's offense works as well as it does is because of how quickly Bron gets off the ball. That stands out most in transition. Like I talked about with Halliburton, he's always looking for an opportunity to kick the ball ahead for easy offense in the open floor. And when he doesn't have the ball, he's still getting out and filling lanes with the size, speed, and power of a freight train. The shape he's in at 41 years old is unlike anything we've seen. Really, the only time you'll notice an obvious physical decline is when he's navigating tight spaces in the half court, which is why they've gone away from the pick and roll as a primary source of offense. They'll still go to it in spurts. For example, from the pinch post, if that initial flare screen doesn't lead to anything, option number 2 is often a pick and roll. This time Bron's able to get to a tough mid-range jumper, but this is actually a great depiction of his decline. After turning the corner, he gets completely separated from Okogie. Instead of going right at the chest of Şengün and creating something at the rim, he falls back on a lower percentage look. Here's another example from the second half. Okogie gets hit, he's got room to attack, yet lets him recover and loses the ball. The short area burst just isn't anything close to what it once was. However, he's still explosive in open space. So if he's able to separate with his handle before using the screen, that's when you get classic downhill Bron, applying pressure and spraying it out to shooters. Sometimes they'll start him off the ball and run him off a screen so that he has that space right off the catch. More importantly though, LA's got their two best shooters in the corners, so they can't really bring help, forcing Capella to defend the pick and roll 1-on-2. Not exactly ideal. When he doesn't have that initial space to burst into, he's not really a threat to turn the corner. But he also isn't going to force the issue. Remember, the ball doesn't stick with him, and he consistently puts guys in positions to attack open space off the catch, which is exactly why he's especially dangerous coming off a screen from one of his guards. Reed jumps out in that hedge, while Smart slips, creating a 4-on-3 advantage. The initial lob gets broken up, only for the ball to find Rui on the weak side, who lets Şengün fly by before stepping into a midi. Again, I'll reiterate, everyone's involved. Everyone's empowered to make decisions, everyone's moving, and everyone's getting their shots up. In Game 1, all 5 of LA starters attempted at least 10 shots, while nobody took more than 15. A true egalitarian approach. And everyone made the most of their opportunities. LeBron had a classic 19 points and 13 assists. Luke Kennard popped off for 27. Smart, in that point guard role, had 15 points and 8 assists. Ayton controlled the paint with 19 and 11, while Rui poured in a hyper-efficient 14. As a team, they only attempted 19 threes, but made about 64% of their two-pointers. And the way they completely terrorized Houston inside the arc left them without an answer. In a last-ditch, fourth-quarter effort, they tried going to a 2-3 zone. Bron spotted up real deep on the wing, while Smart ran pick and roll, knowing that Reed would have to help in the middle of the floor, leaving him with space to stampede into a driving lane, collapse the entire paint, and kick it back out to Smart, who found some space to drop in a 3 that really felt like a dagger. It isn't their typical offense. You don't have the consistent spread pick and roll mastery from the NBA's leading scorer. You don't have a secondary creator who can erupt for 30 points and 10 assists on any given night. What you do have, though, is a well-rounded offensive approach that enables all 5 guys on the court to make decisions, like the Miami Heat from a few years ago, the Pacers from 2025, and the Nuggets, who are competing for a title right now. A 41-year-old LeBron, in year 23, has completely reshaped his game once again and looks like one of the most reliable offensive engines in the playoffs. So moving forward, we'll have to see if the Rockets can find an answer. If not, the Lakers might just find a way to advance to the second round.